So thank you everyone for joining the Chase webinar series again. Welcome back from the summer. Looking forward to our new series, and Ashley is our presenter to kick off the fall 2023 webinar series. So welcome, Ashley, and super excited to have you on board here. This is going to be a CEU accredited course, and it's called "The True Measure of a Space is How It Makes Us Feel." And this is going to be a 45 to 50 minute presentation. We're going to leave about 5 to 10 minutes at the end for questions. If you do have questions, please feel free to either message me directly or share it to the team chat, and we'll ask Ashley those questions at the end. And super excited to actually listen to this presentation. It's going to be an exciting one. Also, let me see if there's other housekeeping here. We also have another CEU accredited course in November 16th. It's on biophilic design and increased employee performance. So you can feel free to go onto the Chase website and register for that one in November. But we're not talking about that right now. We're talking about Ashley and her presentation. So Ashley, I'll do her bio. It's as Technion's senior designer. Yeah, as Technion's senior designer, product application specialist supporting their global markets. Her primary focus is to create optimal furniture solutions. Ashley looks to craft experiences that resonate, create solutions that are informed by the way individuals choose to see and experience their workplace, while challenging and thinking of new ways to work, and will do so by bringing teams together to create cohesive experiences that resonates with their clients. So welcome, Ashley. The floor is all yours, and super excited to have you.
Thank you so much, Danny. What a wonderful introduction. I greatly appreciate being the first of the series for the fall. I feel very honored to be here. So thank you so much for having me today. As Celine will attest, I love to present. I love to talk. So on that note, we're going to get going. We're going to get going right away because I've got 45 minutes in a presentation that I could probably talk to for about 2 hours if you gave me the time. A true measure of space, how it makes you feel, has got to be one of my all-time favorite CEUs of Technion's. I was saying to Danny, it's been a while since I presented it, not necessarily a bad thing. I had to practice again. I'm just going to switch these over. Swap. There we go. Can everybody see the presentation? Wonderful. Celine, do you remember True Measure of Space, how it makes you feel from Neocon? I think it was like 6 years ago. It was still called Neocon at the time. That's when we launched it. And essentially,
but it resonated with me so much.
Yeah. It did, yeah. And this is all about how spaces make us feel, which is a topic that is so relevant even to today's market. Are we not bringing back this conversation more than ever? How does workplace make people feel? How do we bring them back into the workplace? What emotions are we trying to evoke that are going to draw them to want to come back into the workplace? So I always love our knowledge pieces because I find our knowledge pieces are not trendy, but they're founded in great principles of design that are timeless, which is what I love about Technion. Design driven, design details, but timeless. So, that's essentially what True Measure of Space is all about. And we're going to go into Technion's thinking about how spaces make us feel. How do we evoke different emotions? What are some of the emotions that we want to evoke? How do we do it? And we're going to go over some principles. So at the end of the day, design has been driving and evoking emotions for years, okay? And we've leaned on several different incredible authors and partners in order to develop this book. If you do not have the True Measure of a Space book, please let us know. We would be happy to send a copy over to you. I have every single one of them. Not only is the information incredible within them, but they are beautiful coffee books. So if you're only going to use it for decorative purposes, I do not take it personally, but if you do take the moment to open them up, there's a wealth of knowledge and some incredible partners that we've really leaned on in order to help educate us around some of the subjects that we're going to be talking today. And here's a bit of a quick overview and agenda, okay? We're going to go into, we've done our introduction, we're going to go into how spaces make us feel, and we're going to hit a few different hot topics, and that is the emotion of feeling welcomed, empowered, how we connect or feel connected within a workplace, how we provide a sense of calm within the workplace or can evoke a sense of calm as well as a sense of comfort. And then we're going to go over a couple different examples and some beautifully designed spaces and how they leverage some of these principles to evoke emotion within their environment. Now, the visual language of any space communicates and informs us. Often it evokes emotions and responses and potentially leads us to pass on a verdict about how we feel about an environment. As alluded to earlier on, interior design, design in general, has been doing that for years. Here are some very powerful spaces, timeless spaces that have been designed. Do we recognize some of these environments? This is where all the designers nod. Yes, we know every single one of these, right? Who knows the Barcelona Pavilion? It's an important building in history and in modern architecture. It's known for its simple forms, its extravagant materials, all that beautiful onyx, the marble, the travertine. I mean, I do not want to know what it would cost to build this space today, given inflation rates, but it is a spectacular piece of architecture that certainly does evoke very strong emotions. How about this one in Paris? This is probably one of the most famous opera houses of all times. Le Beaux Art building is known for its extravagant opulence. And there's something really spectacular about, how it inspires this sense of wonderment and a sense of participation and something very extravagant, something very opulent, theatrical, which parallels really nicely to the performance that's going on the stage when you're going through the staircase. Grand Central Terminal is another Beaux Art building. It's on a very grand scale. It summons up an epic vision of what is considered to be a very thriving metropolitan at the pinnacle of American long-distance travel rail. Yet it maintains this really intelligence from its very intangible human scale standpoint, despite its very lofty volume. Okay, so it still feels somewhat intimate within an environment that is considered and deemed to be very extravagant. Now, here's a space you've probably not visited. This is a space shuttle, the NASA deck. And it's certainly, but it is very recognizable, though we haven't maybe experienced it firsthand. In this very future tech space, NASA's flight deck design must be very organized. It's very complex. It's instrumental in conveying a sense of agency. It's all about this ability to be able to interact with one's environment with precision, control, and accuracy, which is something we do try to elicit in workplace design. So what are some of those key ingredients that we talked about? Now, again, these are timeless design principles. This isn't about anything earth-shattering. We know them all. We apply them every single day. But I think it's always nice to have that little bit of a refresh. And one of the first ingredients we're going to talk about is that sense of scale. Perhaps the first thing one notices when they enter a room is the scale of the room. It's its size, especially its proportion to ourselves, right? We notice how high things are, how wide things are. We notice how big or how small it makes us feel when we're inside those environments. These things also depend in part upon how one's perception of scale. It also can be altered by light. It can be altered by color. It can be altered by material. And here's an example. Same space, maybe adjusting the level of light that filters in, bringing up that ceiling gives us a much grander feeling when we're inside this environment now. A narrow space can feel very claustrophobic or potentially even pleasantly intimate, depending on how it's designed. Light can play a huge role in that. A very large volume may be inspiring, or it could be very vast. The proportions of a room can feel instinctively right or wrong. We all know that to be true. How many times have we entered a space feeling a little jarred because of the scale or the proportion of furniture within that environment? Ultimately, it is all about having several different varieties at our disposition that create our first impression and our more lasting experiences as we inhabit or adapt to a space. We see how our experience is drastically altered by the light levels when we go from day to night. I'm a huge proponent in our circadian rhythms and allowing natural light to kind of align with our circadian rhythms. It drives my spouse nuts, but I hate turning on light at night. I think as soon as it starts to dim down at night, I keep my lights very dim in the house because I like to align with it. So there's a very different emotion, but there's also a different sense of scale, a different sense of place that I feel when I'm in my home when it's darker at night versus when it's got that beautiful bright daylight filtering in. I live in a beautiful 1984, it's a Victorian reproduction home. So I have big windows everywhere in my house and lots of windows. In fact, very little wall space, which ironically, Some designers would love probably more in order to showcase design elements, but I love all the natural light that filters into my home. So I have a very strong relationship, and light evokes a very strong emotion for me. What about materiality? Materiality plays a critical role in defining a space and influencing its occupants. While the mental process may be somewhat unconscious, human beings translate the texture of material from the visual and the tactile, enriching the sensorial experience that we have and amplifying the meaning and our experience within environments. One can create very warm materiality or a warm feeling, or evoke of warmth, an emotion of warmth, with very soft and plush textiles, whereas a coolness like hard materials like glass and metal can help kind of balance them off, or again set a very different tone. Color also plays a huge role. I remember talking to my son about color theory. And I gave him examples like, does anybody know why McDonald's umbrellas for their outdoor patios are all yellow? Danny's shaking his head. So is JJ. Mark knows. Come on, Mark.
I'm not sure if this is the same one, but I heard that yellow is the first color your brain sees because it's the most complex to decode.
I love that. I did not know that. That's a great one. But yellow actually makes you want to eat more. So they intentionally put their umbrellas all yellow, and you'd think you'd want to have that like high turnover. But instead, McDonald's theory is actually keep them here as long as possible, but evoke an emotion of wanting to eat more. So they do that leveraging color theory. So next time you're at a McDonald's or next time you're out at a restaurant, take note of how much yellow you see, because yellow apparently gives you this desire to want to consume more food. So color can play a huge role in how we feel about space and elicit very strong emotions. Here we've gone from something very warm to something very cool. We would interact differently within these environments. We would feel differently within these environments. We'd also I'd argue the type of work you'd do in each one of these environments could be very different. In a warmer environment, it might be a little more inviting, more conducive to teamwork, whereas in something cooler, it might be a little more conducive to focus work. And what about sound? My God, always will be a hot topic in the workplace, right? It's not going away. It's been a hot topic for 6 years. Nobody knows the answer to it. I don't care how many acoustic panels you put into a space. Nobody's got the answer to how to manage acoustics. But sound plays a huge role in how we feel about a space. Beyond the first impression it makes, each feature inside a space modifies our experience. Sound can either be the catalyst to great work, or it could also be the driving force to great work. Sound can deter us from achieving the type of work that we need to do, or it could be exactly what we need in order to be our most productive selves. We talk about sound, I think, in a slightly different way today, in that we have a better understanding about how we manage sound around us, more so than ever before. Once upon a time, users were so used to high cubicles and that lack of sound, and then we moved them into the open environment. And the number one complaint they all had was the sound around them. It was too much of that pendulum, right? We went from one extreme to the other extreme. And then we tried to find something in the middle, but people were still having a hard time understanding how to adjust their voice level, how to work within those environments. And then the pandemic hit. And we all went home and we locked ourselves in our homes. And then we all went, I need to get out of here. So we found like a coffee shop to go work out of. Well, you have no control over the sound levels in that coffee shop, right? You had no say in it. But all of a sudden, humanity found this way to instinctively kind of adjust their sound levels and adapt, because they chose to go work in that environment. And there was something about empowering them with the choice to do so, that they were better able to adjust themselves to those environments and to working within those environments. So all of a sudden, yes, people are still struggling with sound in the workplace. And, we're looking at like, how do we create more quiet, focused type zones within the workplace? And what does that mean? And what does that look like? So it's not so much about how do we control sound, although we are going to talk about a couple of ways we can control sound in the workplace, leveraging furniture. But it's this mindset, it's this approach. It's just new way of thinking. Where do I go within the workplace where I know I can be loud and I'm not going to bother my peers? Whereas based on the type of work that I'm doing within the day, Do I have the settings where I can handle a little buzz with around me, a little bit of noise around me, but not so much that I can't achieve my focus work or still be my most productive self? Shape. As designers, you guys know this better than anything, right? It's all about that language of design, and shape plays a huge role in that. Rectangular outlines of the windows are mimicked in the rectangular lines within the furniture. It's all about repetition. I'm going to go back to our F&Es, right? From Design 101 school. I teach interior design too at Humber College here in Ontario, and I am all about my P&Es with my students and the principles of design. And then of course it's all about the details. And I think this is one of the biggest changes, I think, as a furniture manufacturer, we've seen most definitely, and how we go about positioning our furniture solutions. Once upon a time, they might've been on a white background or they were rendered with some color, but we're starting to realize that we need to evoke emotion through selling furniture. And one of the ways that we have to do it is pay attention to those details. What's the space that they're in? What's the environment? What's the lighting? What are some of those little elements that are really going to tug on the emotional heartstring of whoever's looking at these renderings? The plants help warm things up. Those beautiful light fixtures reminiscent of, mid-century modern design. These are the small little details that help to emphasize the furniture and really do sell the space or bring in the space or tie in the overall design of the space. So even us as a furniture manufacturer, I know in every single setting application I've ever proposed for a client I put forth, I do try to be very mindful, not just about the details when it comes to our furniture solution and the furniture solutions we're proposing, but what am I putting around it that support the overall intent and the look and feel and the emotions I'm trying to evoke within the settings that I'm creating for our clients. So let's talk about some of those feelings, and let's start with this sense of welcome. How then does architecture and design manipulate what is considered such a natural feeling? This sense of welcome. How do we make somebody feel welcome? Inside our book, we created there's conceptual photography for every one of our principles, and to illustrate the topic. This is the image that represents welcome. So it's translating a symbolic image to design. The photographer represents the premise that finishes and material can convey a message of a warm welcome and create a sense or feeling of anticipation rather than anxiety. So the chair takes the form of this beautiful bouquet. The mass of the roses also indicate that natural materiality. These living plants pay really direct correlation and expression to Mother Nature, which is such a huge driving force in workplace design. How do we access natural light? How do we access greenery? We know we can't necessarily have it through our windows, so we're bringing it into the design of our space. And then you've got those beautiful birds that elicit this sense of, welcome, calm, and something very familiar. So beyond establishing a visual language, interior design can create an inviting and very immersive experience for every visitor in a workplace. We're going to address the sense of welcome within a reception area, which is a key space, I think, in workplace design that's kind of making a comeback. Would you guys agree that reception is becoming more of a prevalent conversation with your clients? What it is, what's the message, what's the tone they're trying to create when their clients walk through the door? What's the emotion they want to evoke? In this example, we're doing something that's very much tethered to the workplace. It's more of an open concept. It's not enclosed. The plan has this sequence of transitional spaces that creates a sense of anticipation and a view into what's the activity going on beyond. So you would look at this as a client that's really trying to create a very immersive experience for all those who come off the elevator and walk into their space. They're directly drawn into who this company is as an organization, what's their culture, what do they represent, what do they want you to feel when you walk inside the space. It's definitely certainly a sense of welcome. We want to choose seating that's very inviting and relaxed in posture. We want to provide support even for technology, even in the reception area. We know we talk about it a lot through workplace, but how many times have you gone for a meeting? Maybe it's running a little late, you got 10, 15 minutes. It's nice to have a little place to perch yourself and do a little work and just be mindful of others. We want to create a really easy transition from that point of arrival into interior space with an approachable reception desk. And we'll show you some beautiful examples coming up. And again, it's all about the details, warm lighting, artwork, plants. These are all the details that really help tie in the space and bring the furniture solution and the overall design intent to life. So here's an example of a reception area that truly evokes a sense of welcome. They attached it to kind of more of a cafe bar type approach as opposed to a formal reception desk. If you've ever been to the Toronto Collaboration Hub, it's our hearth table. It's not a formal receptionist greeting you when you walk through the space, but it's actually one of the employees just sitting at the desk doing some work. I love this one. Look at the bold colors, that beautiful ceiling detail. It certainly evokes an emotion. Everyone's entitled to their opinion of what that emotion is, but it certainly does evoke a very strong emotion. And then there's a McKine Worldwide in New York City. And I love this image. Talk about an inviting, warm welcome. Nice to see you. So if you can't do it through design, you can definitely do it through words. All right, at the end of every single one of the principles, I'm going to have a little pop quiz. Which one of these seats are more welcoming? So I'm going to share lots of prototypes from The Uncomfortable, and I urge you to go take a look at the website. It's comical. At the end of the day, the collection is deliberately inconvenient, okay? Everything you're going to see is inconvenient, but you do have to start to think about it. Which one would you rather sit in? Is it one where you've got to like squish yourself in, but when you get in, you might be comfortable? Or would you rather sit in something that's easy to get in, but once you get in, it's very uncomfortable because you have to sit on an angle? All right, I feel empowered. So how do we enable users of a space that we are designing to feel empowered? In the book, we use this image to kind of communicate this feeling of workplace empowerment. So in terms of supporting the individual's work, this image proposes a need to balance focus work with interaction and stimulus with quiet. A huge topic still to this day in workplace, right? Within the structure of very imposed and dictated architecture and furniture, at the same time, the image uses books to symbolize the knowledge of workers. So this need to have access to information always. I'm still very much an analog person, whatever that's worth. I love to print my documents. I love more tactile stuff, but I have this need for access to information, whether it's through technology or through analog sources. I'm a learner also. It's one of my number one strengths. But how do we empower users to have access to knowledge in a workplace? So with quiet being such a rare commodity, as we've already alluded to in the workplace, it's imperative to equip employees with the right tools and the right sorts of environments that enable people to achieve focus work and flow. It's interesting because, again, part of my role at Technion is I work very heavily with our marketing team. And we're working on our next marketing initiative, which I was a little shocked to find out was all about focus work. But in speaking to our clients and in speaking to the marketing team and kind of delving into the subject more, yes, collaborative spaces, those ancillary spaces are still a huge topic. But the problem is we came back from the pandemic into the workplace and everybody said social spaces, social spaces, social spaces. That's what everybody needs. That's what they want in the workplace. Remember that pendulum we talked about when we went from closed workstations to open workstations? Yeah, here's the new one. We went from all workstations to all collaborative spaces. And ironically enough, the number one thing people are saying, they're saying, great, it's fun to be back in the workplace, but I can't achieve any of my focus work that I know I can achieve at home. And that's leading to several conversations, one of which is, are we hybrid? Are we fully back at home? Are we a mixture of the two? Or do we fully go back into the office? If we are into the office, how do we create spaces to help our users focus? And it is being tied back to workstations, to be quite honest with you. And that's one of our next initiatives within the marketing department at Technion. Because few of us do our best work in noisy environments or rooms that's lacking any way to potentially block off sound or as well as visual distractions, because I think there's two things we need to talk about. It's not just noise, but visual distractions. So a couple little factors we can include, and I would probably shift these a little bit based on where we are today in workplace design. But again, some of the principles are founded in what we know works well. So let's keep those two settings further away from one another. I remember I was working on a bid for a client and I was doing all these bubble diagrams, because I still do bubble diagrams. I love them. And we were, looking at different ways of planning, and we did, our usual, bubbles next to each other, adjacent to one another. But then we explored this idea of like, what if we took our bubbles and we overlap them? How do we create these transitional spaces between more collaborative and focused work? One that kind of sets this tone of like, you can collaborate, but it's more quiet collaboration, more analog collaboration versus the heavy collaboration zones, which may be a little more digitally driven. And that's one of the ways that we start to look at kind of creating those visual as well as acoustical and physical barriers from one environment to another to support people's focus work within the workstations. So we're going to position those workstations a little further away from the noisy space, and we're going to try to create these transitional spaces between the two. Views for the outdoor really help rest the eye. It helps prevent a lot of fatigue, having that access to natural light. Views that contain natural flora or greenery are especially restorative. However, a great urban view is invigorating too, if that's what you have access to. But again, can we find new ways or creative ways to bring in, flowers and greenery within the space? Let's be honest, we all do it. Beautiful plants, beautiful pots, that kind of thing. Can we employ screens, plants, and other actual and perceived barriers that can provide a greater degree of acoustic as well as visual privacy? Visual screens can give one the impression of acoustics, and I think that's always a really interesting word to use, because I think there's the reality of actual privacy and perceived privacy. And those could be two very different things. And a conversation that I love to have with our clients is, at the end of the day, do we need to provide actual privacy for enclosed walls? Or do we need to provide perceived acoustic and visual privacy that sets the tone to kind of diminish your voice within those environments? Those are two very different ways of planning and two very different ways of providing solutions for the clients. Cool neutrals are very balanced. Warm, cool neutrals serve as a more quiet tone or palette for these environments and to achieve focus work. And adding cool accent colors like blues and greens and purples as well, and very deep pale grays and silver tones, rather than just using very, very high contrast colors, which can evoke more of a sense of noise. Don't forget, patterns and scale, always important. And here's just a few examples of some workplaces that created these very empowering spaces for their users. Just keep my eye on time. Do you recognize some of this furniture? And here's our next one for empowered. So which one would empower you more, the uncomfortable broom or the uncomfortable watering can? I would argue the broom would empower you more, because at least you could use it for snow removal. The other one is useless. It'd be good for my son to keep him busy for he's 16 months old, to keep him busy for a long time. He wouldn't be able to figure out why the water is not watering the flowers. I feel connected. So how do we enable users in a space that we designed to feel connected to one another? I remember there was a group of us at NeoCon the year that we did the True Measure space actually lined themselves up, and we mimicked the little coffee. So like in very social rituals, workplace manners can be very understood through cues provided by intelligent design. Design gestures such as the application of warm materials, energized colors and furniture configurations convey an intended function for the space. We've kind of alluded to this already. The message is implicit in the design, and no instructions are technically or should be required if done right. So in order to create a workspace where people feel connected, it's important to consider and experiment with the organization, the proximity of density and furniture within a space, material finishes, and to bolster a sense of connection and community, a workspace might include some of the following elements: communal tables for people to socialize and work together, a variety of different chairs, postures, ottomans, stools that can be moved around to accommodate different groups, different tasks, different work modes. And then color blocking, contrasting colors, textures, finishes serve as a way to really activate a space. Mobile screens can be repositioned to create visual or auditory privacy. We can include privacy for nearby workstations. We can do mid to large scale patterns that stimulate, especially when applied to large scale elements. And then super saturated colors. I love this green. They call it Kelly green. I'm hoping it'll make a comeback. It's certainly not the palette of 2023 or 2024, but I'd love for Kelly green to make a comeback. I'm all about the greens. I think my sons both knew I was an interior designer because their birthstones are both green. One of them's the light green and one of them's the dark green. So I do have a soft spot for green. And here's some great examples of how some clients have tried to create these connected environments. It's really interesting. This one's WeWork. And the WeWork founder, through observing the initial designs of his space, although very open and inviting, he actually realized that people weren't interacting with the furniture. They ended up going into these like small little meeting rooms and enclosed. So what they started to do was create these smaller groupings within the open environment. And it was like overnight, all of a sudden, people became drawn to them. So there's this fine balance in the open plan of creating settings that are like small to mid to large. And I think that's something that's becoming a very hot conversation again, especially when referring to these ancillary spaces, is you need those different levels of user interaction and settings and applications. You need to be able to empower people to either go in small groups, into meeting groups, or large groups. If it's too open, chances are it's only going to serve for a purpose for certain minimal tasks. Maybe it's for large presentations, large groupings, but as an individual, you may not want to go into that environment to achieve focus work or to work out of. But you can have collaborative, open, smaller settings that set a very different tone and help you create the sense of connection within the environment in a much like smaller, more intimate way within the open plan. And I love this whole idea of like observing how clients interact with space and then adapting. We do it with a lot of our clients and we learn through them as well. It's one of the reasons why they've kept me more of a hybrid role. So I'm still very client facing because I learn so much from our clients and I get to take that information back. And it really does help us make educated decisions regarding our marketing approach for our marketing material, our collateral, even our next, knowledge piece, which will be coming out probably in the next year or two. All right, which one of these makes you feel more together? The uncomfortable champagne glass or the engagement mugs? I love all those images. So how can design make us feel calm? Here's the polar opposite. This photo is meant to convey the sense of calm. So you can see all that like hustle and bustle in the background. And we've kind of talked about it. WeWork found this way to create these senses of calm or these intimate moments within the hustle and bustle of a very open floor plate. So we need to be able to take breaks from meetings at the end of the day. It's too much. We love socializing. I love going into the office. I go to head office once a week and I go downtown once a week. Head office, I'm still productive. Downtown, I get nothing done. But I go downtown knowing, it's either got to meet with a client or I want to re-energize myself and I need to be around my peers, or I'm presenting to a group or internally or externally. But at the end of the day, we need a break. And when I'm downtown, I need a break. I need to find a moment of reprieve, a moment to myself. Sometimes it's about going to go grab a coffee. But, we do have certain settings within our workplace at the Downtown Hub that enable me and empower me to be able to find that moment, whether it's a moment of quiet or if it's a moment where I need to take a conference call or do a presentation virtually, where I need, the sense of calm around me in order to be my best self. So design can elicit feelings of calm by providing space to work away from one's colleagues. Sheltering furniture like high backs, chairs, banquette seating can provide semi-private spaces. And I think those are the environments where, again, you might want to have the hustle and bustle, like the image in the background, that noise kind of filtering around you so you can feed off the energy of the environment, but you're still being able to find spaces where you can get your focused, quiet work within those environments. Acoustic control, obviously very important, as well as perceived visual privacy. Warm textures, woods, bricks, think of your browns, your taupes, your beiges. They can really help elicit the sense of calm. So can your blues, by the way, if we go back to color theory. And then greenery, access to natural light. And there's my beautiful greens again. So colors that are not very saturated, though, in this case, as opposed to my beautiful Kelly green earlier on, which is very saturated in color. It's funny. I always laugh when I see the Facebook projects because I used to be an interior designer and we designed the Toronto Facebook office. And I used to laugh with my boss because I was like, it's like a Smartie box exploded in this space, which to me is like the polar opposite of eliciting the sense of calm. Like it's just too much color. It's too overwhelming. But again, that's my perception. But one of the ways that they tried to create this evoke or the sense of calm within the environment is using lots of natural wood. So you'll notice in all those images, I'll just filter through them again, there's an abundance of natural wood with these pops of color. And then they tried to create these very like intimate settings throughout the workplace. So these really smaller settings and applications to provide that sense of calm. So I find it interesting because again, as the designer who had worked upon it once a time, I struggled with it. But now in hindsight, looking back, it was interesting to see the juxtaposition of, all this warm materiality and these smaller settings, although in very vibrant colors, still eliciting the sense of calm for the users as they interacted with it. But I remember even the inside of the closet was painted like a hot pink. Like it is literally like a Smartie box exploded in every single Facebook office. I'd be intrigued to see if they have a different design approach now. But this is what it was back then. This Kickstarter in Brooklyn. Here we do see those more muted tones that we were referring to earlier on, access to natural light, access to biophilia. Look at those beautiful loungers. All right, what about a sense of comfortable? So here we've got this woman who's kind of floating on air. And she's completely at ease. It somehow feels natural to her. It feels easy. It implies that there's a sustainable workplace. Can it be addressed not only in physical comfort, like optimal temperatures and fresh air and a proper ergonomics and all those fun things, but also this feeling of being at home in the environment. And again, it's been a while since I presented this, and of course I practice. I read that line and I was like, oh my God. It is like the conversation of 2023, how do we make the workplace feel like home? It's making a comeback, but it's a big part of it. We've been talking about it for years. We want to have that influence of, evoking this emotion and the emotion we feel at home. We know it's a comfortable place. It's something that we know. It's something that, we've created an environment that feels comfortable to us. So how do we then bring that and translate that back into our workplace? We can arrange furniture by providing a very, very biophilic design pattern. That can be one way that we can definitely do it. Provide this moment of refuge, which can be huge. That include very familiar elements of home life, such as table runners, floor lamps, greenery. I don't know how long everyone's known Technion for, but Technion for years used to use fruit as kind of like the symbol for our marketing material. We started with apples, we did pears, but it used to always be that like key driving factor in all of our marketing material for years. That goes back to like 20 years ago. So even then we were using something very familiar, something we used at home, and we were applying it into all of our marketing material so that when you looked at the images of our furniture solutions, you were instinctively drawn to them. They felt comfortable to you, you felt at ease. And we used fruit in order to do that for many, many years. So again, just interesting that like timeless principles will always be timeless. Incorporate accessories that keep refreshments near by. Now, I love even like our new kiosk system that has a whole little cafe trolley now. So you can literally bring coffee anywhere in the workplace to make you feel comfortable. As silly as it is, it's something, drinking a beverage, warm, cold, somehow always elicits a sense of comfort. Use very warm textiles to create these very tactile enclosed elements and spaces to work within. Again, always natural access to natural light, but it also ensure there's a comfortable temperature and humidity within the environment and airflow. And here's some really great examples. This is one of the Pinterest buildings in California. Very spacious ground floors, lots of, access to that central atrium. from a visual standpoint. Lots of natural elements, very warm finishes. And lots of little nooks and intimate little workspaces. Here's BuzzFeed. All right, which one makes you feel more comfortable, the concrete umbrella or the uncomfortable rain boots? I'm laughing because I remember it was my son's like first week at school, and on like day 3, it was like I went to go pick him up, and all of a sudden, the moment I got out of the car with my open toe heels, it was like torrential downpour came down. So I look at those boots, I'm like, nah, that's a Wednesday in my heels. Like I'm used to that, so I know which one's more comfortable for me. At the end of the day, great workplace design is founded in the respect for the users and those who interact with the space. Uber, this is Uber's head office in California. The concept becomes here was about something very tangible. It's about rich materials. It was about coppers, leathers, the balance of like economic class when you look at like the concrete and the raw steels. That was part of their design approach, being very respectful to nature and bringing that into the environment to be respectful of the people interacting with it. Terminal 2 in San Fran. I love this terminal. That first image, I have to laugh because I was working with my students and we're designing this space, and there was like a net crawl for kids. Go to play gens and like kids can crawl up these net crawls. So I love this idea of like that beautiful net crawl that almost looks like it's hanging from the ceiling. This one right here. And this terminal was really designed so that you feel like you don't need to go to the Air Canada lounge. You're being given a very exclusive experience, regardless of where you are within the environment. Beautiful access to beautiful lounge seating, access to natural light, elevated finished palettes. So you feel exclusive, regardless of where you are within the airport. I don't know how many people have time to do yoga when they're at the airport, but I found that image very interesting. And at the end here, we're just sum up the principles. Evoking the sense of welcome is all about visual barriers, relaxing seating, technology that supports the work, something that's a very approachable, warm lighting, intriguing artwork, plant life, refreshments. Evoking the sense of empowerment is all about workstations away from noise, or like we talked about, those transitional spaces between the two, access to natural light, cool neutrals, warm colors, cool accents, acoustics, lots of visual privacy, textures, and variety of scale. Connected is all about, those community tables, access to different postures and seating, color blocking, screens, the ability to adjust your level of acoustic privacy as well as visual privacy, and set different types of cues for the work you're going to achieve within those spaces. Mid to large scale patterns, saturated but not overly bright colors. Calm provides space away from others. It's all about sheltering furniture, cues from Mother Nature, organic materials, natural light, views of the outdoors, muted color palettes. And comfort is all about biophilic design, familiar markers of home, refreshments, options in terms of energy level, informality, noise, warm textures, natural light will always be a primary theme, and comfortable climate. And I sum it up with this image for you guys, and I'll leave you with this one. Which design has the least respect for the user's experience here? Anybody catch the bathroom? It says men on the door, but up top says woman. The other one says woman on the door and men up top.
I didn't notice that. Okay.
Thank you so much for your time.
Awesome.
And I did it. 15 minutes for questions.
That's amazing, Ashley. Well, again, I always appreciate your energy and enthusiasm, and just the way that you deliver the message. It's fantastic. So
Thank you,
the power of emotion. Wow. Who's got questions for Ashley? We have a few minutes. Which brave soul is going to speak up and ask Ashley a question? I'll start, Ashley, by saying, when you're consulting with a client, we're all trying to be out there and helping people to imagine their space, and everybody's interested in creating space that people want to be in. And so how do you address this topic of emotion and balancing the elements? How would you start that conversation?
It's a tough one because, one of the biggest changes I think we've seen in workplace design is, the users are empowered with the knowledge of what they need in order to be happy in the workplace, more so than ever. Once upon a time, they just went into the office, they were given a cubicle and they were told, work out of here. But through the years, we've seen a huge transition in workplace design. And then we also were sent home and then we were told to, figure it all out on your own. And you're empowered now to figure out where you want to sit, how you want to work, what posture you need to be in. And they're coming back and they're saying, okay, once upon a time, you told me collaborate in this setting. But now I'm telling you that's not conducive for me. I've experienced firsthand that these are the environments I want to collaborate within. These are the types of settings. These are the furniture applications and pieces. This is the scale. This is the color. This is the environment. So opening those lines of communication is so important. I think visual cues so important. Nowadays, I work a lot with our clients in order to create a lot more thought starters. We lean on inspiration from other forms of design more so than ever before, which I absolutely love. I will never turn to workplace design in order to inspire a new solution for a client. I actually will turn to hospitality. I'll turn to, hotels, restaurant design. I'll turn to residential design, and I'll use cues from those lines of design in order to set a different tone as well as a different approach to how we're addressing workplace design. And that tends to get people excited. It's no longer about what's everybody else doing in workplace design in order to set a tone for who we want to be and how we want to approach. We're trying to create more unique, tailored experiences and solutions for our clients.
Yeah, excellent. And what emotion do you feel that you would put the primary energy towards in today's world?
Again, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. Like, I do love going downtown, but I remember having this conversation with somebody. I love this idea of like experiential design in the workplace. Experiential, there's so much of it in. They talk about it a lot in museum design. They do it a lot with these like interactive pop-ups, that kind of thing. And I think there's something to be said about the experience of going into the workplace. I don't go into the workplace because if there's a certain furniture piece there or a setting that I want to work out of for the day. And I work for a furniture manufacturer. So it's nothing against furniture. Furniture can elicit really strong emotions, but I go into the office because, that morning I'm going to do my hair and my makeup. I'm going to put on my heels. I take the GO train in, the nice lady at Starbucks compliments my attire. I think we go to different places and we do different things in order to achieve different emotions. And it's not about having one emotion. I think it depends on the day and what emotion you feel you need that day. There's days where I just need to send a sense of calm. And I know going downtown is not going to do that for me. And I know where I need to work in order to get that sense of calm. But there's certainly days where I need a little more excitement or, that experience. It kind of evokes a sense of joy, which is another great emotion to talk about when we talk about workplace design. So I think it's not about one emotion. I think it's about just being a little more in tune with ourselves and understanding what we need that day. And sometimes the need for different emotions or to evoke different emotions changes throughout the day. But sometimes we wake up and we know exactly what we need to feel that day in order to support the type of work we want to do and what emotions we want to elicit.
Oh, excellent. What do others have to say about that topic?
I see a lot of people are at home still working. Who goes into the office? What draws you into the office?
What I'm noticing, Ashley, is here in Vancouver is it used to be that we would have clients come in and say, "Oh, you're so lucky to work in this space. You're in a showroom. This is so great." The nice thing is now our clients are coming into offices that look like that. They're empowered to influence that design and decision, and honestly, so many of those clients come in and your workspace is actually going to look a lot like this when everything's said and done, because that's what we're doing now. And it is to make people feel like they want, when they cross that threshold, that's where they want to be.
Yeah. And when you empower them with having a choice or a voice and what that's going to look like and what that experience is going to be, they're more inclined to be drawn to go back into the office.
Absolutely.
Diane, you raised your hand. Do you want to say what helps you to get into the office and want to work from the office when many people are working from home these days?
Well, scheduling, I guess, the big part. Plus resources. I don't have all my resources at home. So, I'm largely dependent on fabrics and those kinds of things. And, digital just doesn't do it. You have to see the real thing. So for me, I have to come in for certain things. It's just not possible. So that's definitely a functional thing for me. I have to come in.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
Plus, I just, I started out as a home office and I was happy when I got to get rid of my stuff after a while, having that. It's glamorous at first, I think, when you have to be when you have to be in your office commercially downtown or whatever. There's a certain appeal, like, oh, it's great when I can work at home. But when you start out with that and you have that at your fingertips every day, it's not that great. You got kids coming and going, you're fighting with your samples. I mean, it's just that balance. And after a while, I was happy to get an office away from home. And my family was thrilled to get me out of there with all the samples. They were just happy, like, don't let the door hit you on the way out. And and off I went. And the good news is I'm 10 minutes from home, so I'm kind of close and it's easily accessible if I do need to get back and forth. That's the thing. I don't have to put up with a large commute, so it's pretty easy for me to go back and forth. But those are kind of my conditions, I guess you can say.
Yeah. Fantastic.
Yeah. I was also very fortunate. I used to work, I'll be honest, I used to work for my mother. She's an interior designer as well, commercial designer. And I started working for my mom when I graduated, which was like 17 years ago. And even back then, my mom had a hybrid work model, essentially. We'd go to the gym at like 10 o'clock in the morning and not roll into the office until 12. Days where we had to meet with clients all day downtown. We didn't go to the office in Scarborough when we knew we had to be young in Eglinton for the most part of the day. So we'd work from home or, from each other's houses, and then we'd meet downtown and then we'd go back home to finish our work. So I've always had the luxury of that hybrid work model. But I will say I had a huge mind shift when we opened up the hub in downtown Toronto. Our head office used to be Steeles and Dufferin, and that was our only office. But when we opened the showroom downtown, the energy you felt when you were down there drew you into the office on a totally different level.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what that notion of connected. It's what we're hearing so much of is the need for that connection, right? And yeah.
I used to work in Toronto as well. Sorry, just to add a couple of things. I used to work in Toronto as well, and my commute was just about an hour, and that was still worthwhile for me to come in and have that connection with people. The hour and the experience of being with your colleagues, for sure.
I take the GO train, so that's like only 40 minutes of peace and quiet every day. I have 4 kids, so it's not quiet at home. So I very much look forward to going downtown.
Excellent. And Thad, is that a question you have with the virtual arm raised there?
Yes, I do. Ashley, I was just curious, with your clients, if they've ever noticed a tangible or measurable change in productivity in an office, if that's actually been experienced with, their setup.
I struggle with this idea of tangible, measurable. I think that's where my issue with the question would lie. We tend to not go that route only because what's deemed tangible and measurable for one user who's interacting with the space would not be relevant to everybody else. So again, I think what makes a space tangible or exciting is, the emotions that it evokes. I don't think it's about an actual metric. I don't like this idea of attaching data to whether or not a space works. But I do like this idea of, are we evoking the right emotions? Are we making people feel comfortable and welcome and excited to be in the workplace? So yeah, that would be my 2 cents on that one.
Yeah, I think just as we were talking about the hub, it just has that energy that you want to go to. So now, how do you quantify that? When Celine's traveling an hour to go there, how do you start quantifying that and be able to put data towards it all? So that's very interesting.
Yeah. But even to Celine's point, she drove in, she just thought the hour was worthwhile to go in, not because of any measurable data for once she was there, she was more productive or happier. It was just, she knew in her heart that she felt it worthwhile to drive downtown to be there and be a part of that environment. I also love that Judith wrote in the chat that her clients have embraced this feel of residential furniture groupings mixed into their open office, a sense of more welcoming. Agreed. And, that's one thing we've been working on. I've been working on with the marketing team and our product developers is how do we interject even further this residential inspiration into the workplace, not just into groupings of furniture like lounge furniture where it's been there forever, but how do we inject that into more of our focus type settings and applications, into the workstation, into the private office, and what does that look like today? How do we make that feel and look and function more like the home? And I challenge a lot of our specifiers to think differently about what a private office means. How do we design it? How do we approach it? And how do we evoke that sense of welcome within those spaces? So great point, Judith. And I appreciate it because it means that I'm on track with what I'm telling marketing to do.
Well, fantastic. For the sake of time, again, we're going to have to cut it a little bit shorter, but just certainly appreciate all your time and energy, Ashley, and thank you for taking on for lending you to the webinar series here.
Always a pleasure.
Again, what a great way to for Chase Obsteteers to kick off our fall webinar series with you starting things off here. So very much appreciated. Want to encourage everyone to please fill out the survey. You're going to get a survey request after this, and we want to hear your feedback in terms of what kind of topics you'd like to see. What are your thoughts in terms of how we can continuously improve and drive more value for yourselves and the community of whole. So I also want to remind you to go onto the Chase website to register for the upcoming CEU webinars that are going to be coming up. There's going to be one in November and one in December. We're going to be having a very interesting topic in October. It's not going to be CEU accredited, but it's going to be a very interesting topic. So you'll see that invitation coming out. But the ones that are CEU accredited are going to be in November and December, and really look forward to seeing each of you there. So once again, thank you so much for everyone's time. Ashley did it within 2 minutes here as well. We respected everyone's time, getting before 1 o'clock Pacific time here. So we'll let everybody get back to your productivity, and hope that you invoke the right emotions as you're going and doing your thing out there. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Ashley. Bye-bye.
Have a wonderful afternoon. Bye.